Hey everyone, Andrew here, and I'm doing another top 5 today. I finally decided if I'm gonna do this, since I started with Disney, my follow-up should be Pixar. The top 5 best and worst of Pixar. And you know me, I'm gonna start with the top 5 worst, get the negatives out of the way. So Pixar is one of those amazing companies that just, much like the Marvel Studios, really hasn't made any bad films. They've made some not great films, and they've made some absolutely amazing films. I feel like most of us all agree on what the bottom 3 are, and it's just which ones is the fourth worst and fifth worst that we get into a little bit of discussion, a little bit of argument, especially the fifth one. And for me, I was split between two, and I didn't know which one I really wanted to put as my worst. And it ended up kind of going with the one that has the least impact on Pixar in general, and also the one that has just kind of aged the worst. So, A Bug's Life. This one, I actually do really like Bug's Life. I do like elements of it. It was the second attempt from Pixar, so it's the second oldest. So the fact that the animation hasn't aged the best is, well, forgiving, because it was literally the second one they did, but the original Toy Story has aged okay, whereas this one, you look at it and you just can kind of see it, the gray and the animation tried desperately to hold itself together into a shape to make these characters work. For those of you that are wondering, the one that I was debating between this and that one is Monsters, Inc. Monsters, Inc. has never been one that I've particularly loved. I know people that do love this, and I know people that that's their favorite. But for me, it was always just kind of okay. But my favorite thing in it is the same thing that's my favorite thing in Bug's Life, which is the blooper reel credits, which they used to do, which they did for Bug's Life, Monsters, Inc., and Toy Story 2. And I really miss that. I really wish they would bring that back, because that's my favorite memories from Bug's Life and Monsters, Inc., is just the Flick holding up the thing going, "To infinity and beyond!" I'm sorry, I just had to say that. And that one random bug lady knocking over a cutout and going, "I'm sorry, I thought it was real. I'm gonna take this home with me." Like, that's the things I remember about both of these movies, is just those weird cutout, those things. Bug's Life is a very kind of simple story, and a story that we had a couple different movies come out with a similar part, but it's just two warring factions, one using their strength to overcome a faction that is larger population. And then being like, well, we need to go and get tough warrior bugs to help us. But then, them turning out to not be warriors, they're just performers and having to come up with a smarter, different type of plan. Honestly, there's a lot of good in this. Mostly, the reason it gets knocked down is that it's a little predictable. It has not aged the best. Its characters are probably the most basic that Pixar really has ever done. It's like, the princess really is one note. The little princess is kind of one note. Flick is pretty, like, they're all kind of a little bit simplistic. There's some that actually have some depth to them, which is kind of cool. A lot of the circus characters have some pretty good depth to them. I really like the ladybug who doesn't like being called a ladybug and being treated as a female and getting into fights and doing all that. Hopper, the villain, who's actually a really good, almost terrifying villain, but I love the fact that he acknowledges that he is not the strongest of the situation, that the ants could overthrow him. They just have to rally together. I'm like, to have a villain in that position who knows that this power only lasts as long as he can keep them under his foot is really interesting and works really well for this character. And honestly, I can sort of see someone saying this is their favorite, if it is, but I have to be 100% honest, I kind of prefer Ants, the spin-off movie that was one of the first big things that happened with Pixar. Is there was a fight between two of the directors and two of the people what story they wanted to tell, and one split off and went to go work for DreamWorks, and he made Ants, while Pixar made Bugs Life. And both are pretty good. Both have their stuff, but I find that Ants' animation and storytelling are, well, its animation is held up better, and its storytelling is unique enough that it's interesting. I mean, it's not really a bug film. It's a Woody Allen film told through a bug narrative. But I really like Ants, and that's sort of, like, I can't really push A Bug's Life up to being this better thing because it's not even the best version of this story. Sorry. Moving on. Brave. Brave, sadly, is one that isn't bad, but it's wasted potential. I always remember the way it was pitched to me. The way people were talking about it, the way the trailers showed it off for me. That it was a princess story unlike any we'd ever seen before. That it was darker. That it was gritty. That this was a princess who had no prince. That she had to save herself. And what we got was a relatively lighthearted story of a mother and daughter learning to accept and love each other. Still good, but it's that you could have been amazing and you chose to be good. The concept is good. The characters are good. I like elements of it, but it's just that super predictable plot. It's like you get the mom character and the daughter fighting, and I'm like, oh great, the daughter's going to do something that's going to cause her mom to turn into something to happen to the mom. And lo and behold, that is. And once we figure out that that happened, you kind of figure out who the big bad is in the end, and everything kind of pieces together pretty easily. But again, it's like, it was sort of pitched as a fantasy element, so the first thing we ever see in the trailer is her riding on the horse with those will-o'-the-wisps and is about to be attacked by some creature that we can't see. And then you watch the movie, and the only things that are really magical in the story is the will-o'-the-wisps, who do nothing, the witch, who is only there for one scene and then disappears, and then the magical transformation of a human into a bear. Okay. Is that it? Alright, so otherwise it's realistic-ish. Okay. I do like the fact that they made her talk like a bear when the mom got transformed into it, because that at least is something different that no one else has really done. Everyone else would just have her still be able to talk. But it was actually kind of interesting and kind of fun to do that. That said, it's a little like Brother Bear, so it's almost sort of a ripoff of Disney. And I do like the characters. Like, all the characters are really good. The story's pretty decent. It's just, there was so many other places you could have taken this. There was so much you could have done with this. And you gave us an almost generic princess story. Just slightly varied princess story. There was so much potential in the concept, and it didn't get to live up to any of that. And that just makes me sad. The Good Dinosaur. Yeah, this one falls under, much like Disney's Dinosaur, a movie that is sadly lacking because it's not Land Before Time. But this one I give a little bit more leeway than that, because Dinosaur was just a flat-out ripoff, or was pretty much trying to be beat for beat Land Before Time. Good Dinosaur does not take that path. Instead, they decided to take Land Before Time and mix it with Ice Age. Okay, that's an idea. And then that's a combo. That kind of works. They do a decent job of it. But there are certain things in this that just don't necessarily really work. The two different styles of animation being used is really jarring. The photorealistic background images with the super cartoony dinosaur designs is off-putting. Like, I got used to it after a while, but it's very jarring. It also doesn't help that this story is very predictable. It is very much just the kid who is scared gets lost and has to find courage and journey home, and find the courage within himself, type of thing. It's a story that we've all you've seen, everyone has read at least 3 different versions of this type of story. It's very common. It's a very good kind of story when it's done really interesting and really creatively. And this one is just done sort of interestingly. And to be honest, the main character, Arlo, is super annoying. I found him very grating in this. I don't hate him. I like a lot of the characters. Like, one of the best things in the entire thing, the thing I really like, is the idea of these T-Rexes being cowboys and cattle ranchers, and they're running like they're riding themselves. So they have the arms out here while they're running. It's just the weirdest thing, but I love it. And nothing like all you need to sell me on a character being old. And like, if you cast Sam Elliott as anyone who just looks intimidating and grimacing, I'm sold. Sam Elliott's voice is pure gold. So that part I love. I did like the idea of how these long necks got around farming and doing all this stuff, considering they have no hands and don't even really have feet, and they just figured out how to use their heads and their tails to do things, which is kind of cool. Good character work from the human character. You got the weird villains of the pterodactyl cult people that isn't strong, but at least they're kind of terrifying. But they're also idiots, so it doesn't necessarily work. And then you have this one weird character who just appears out of nowhere, has a random scene, and then he's never mentioned or seen again, and just like, who are you? Why are you here? It's the hero's journey. It's just, I got called to adventure, I didn't want to do it, I got forced into it, now I have to make the journey home. And I went into this hoping this one would be pretty good. I was hoping. I still love Pixar. I'll always love Pixar. And I honestly do think you can tell a good dinosaur story that isn't just bad because it's not Land Before Time. I have yet to come across one. I still think that that you could do something with this. I just think it's very weird that they chose to fuse it with Ice Age, which Ice Age isn't even that great a film. It's alright. It has moments of it that work. But I honestly, I think Ice Age 2 is way better than Ice Age. But this is strictly the first one. It's kind of the weird one to pick to fuse together with Land Before Time to make this plot. Cars 2. Yeah, this one is interesting when it comes to me. Because if you watched my 2017 review of the top 5 films of that year, I had Cars 3 listed in my top 5 films. It was tied for number 2 along with Coco. And I have a very strong affection for the original Cars, which I will talk about. So I absolutely love the Cars universe and everything about it and all this stuff. So Cars 2 should be perfect for me. But it's not. Adding in the spy element was, while sort of interesting, really jarring and doesn't necessarily work for the story. Having Mater become the main character, I don't hate it, but he's very grating, and I can understand why everyone else hates him with this. I honestly more hate everyone talking to and reacting to Mater more than I hate Mater in this. Because he's doing it, Larry the Cable Guy is doing his best to do a good vocal performance for this, and doing the best with the material. But then you got everyone listening to him and going, oh, he's in disguise. That means he's cooler than he is. He's the world's best agent because he can fake this. And it's like, anybody after talking to Mater for more than 10 minutes would go, no, he's just an idiot. And there's stuff in this that kind of work. There's a lot of little jokes and little things that really are kind of work. It has one of my favorite jokes in all of Pixar, which is they're all at the airport going through security customs, and the cars are having to take their tires off to run them through the metal detector, and one of them is just on his rims squeaking through the giant metal detector, and it just goes off, and he goes, "Come on!" I'm like, that makes me roll in the seats every time I see it. That is hilarious to me. And the idea of having the villains be these lemon vehicles, these vehicles that aren't designed to last long and work well, kind of works. But the whole aesthetic of a spy novel thing, but then they also try to make it a race story, where it's all about, that, but then it's a friendship story between Lightning and Mater, even though Lightning's barely in the movie, and there's a murder plot to get rid of hybrids, or it's so convoluted and so ridiculous and so stupid at points where you're just kind of like, ugh. And I've seen this movie a couple times. I could argue it's a guilty pleasure, but I don't necessarily love it, so I can't really say that. I still think it has good elements, but it's just very, very flawed. And I can totally understand why people had no interest in seeing Cars 3 after Cars 2. You could have honestly done this movie without any of the original cast. You could have done this, if this had been a Flynn McMissile movie, and then Holly Shipwell as his assistant, who had to work her way up to becoming a good solo agent, this could have been interesting. But because they tried to shoehorn in Mater and the Lightning and all of the other characters, it just doesn't work as well. So, I don't really have any dishonorable mentions. There is literally one I'm going to talk about, and this falls under the category of movie that y'all love that I don't particularly like. And for a long time, this was my least favorite Pixar film. And that is Toy Story. And I can already sense the disturbance in the force that everyone's pissed off at me about saying that. But I've never really liked the original Toy Story. I give it more respect now, and I'm more appreciative of it now than when I was younger. I still remember seeing this in theaters. I remember going to see it at least twice in theaters, and the second time was not by choice. The second time was I had a friend who was throwing a birthday party, and I went, and they decided they were all going to the movies, and I got dragged to see Toy Story, after having already seen it and not particularly liked it. And we have to get into the why don't I like it? What is it that everyone else loves that I don't like? And the honest answer is the plot, the character of Woody. The jealousy between two people and the fighting to be the top toy thing, I don't like it. I really don't. I don't like how evil Woody is in this. Like, he literally tries to destroy Buzz at a certain point. Well, it's like, he's like, I'm gonna do this and make sure you get forgotten. Like, it's like Sid is supposed to be the big villain of Toy Story. The big villain of Toy Story is Woody, who's also supposed to be the main character. And it's an interesting look at it, and it's an interesting way to tell this story. And don't get me wrong, I love Toy Story 2 and I love Toy Story 3, and I'm very much looking forward to Toy Story 4. But I can't like this film. I can't like Woody in it. The animation hasn't aged well. It's aged better than Bug's Life for certain, but there's just, ugh. But I do give it respect. It is the first 3D animated movie. It's the thing that kicked off Pixar. It does have good characters and good stuff in it. Yeah, it's just, when I get down to it, while I acknowledge that Toy Story has some great stuff into it, I do not enjoy watching it. I get no joy from it. I never did. And I've tried, and I've rewatched it with my newer appreciation and trying to accept it and then like it more. And it's still grating to me, and I still don't enjoy it. And while I rate it higher, and I would definitely, it's higher than Monsters Inc., Bugs Life, Cars 2, Brave, and Last Dinosaur, I would watch pretty much any of those again before I rewatch Toy Story. Which means Toy Story should probably be my number one worst. But I have to give it props for what it is. And and I have to say that while I don't like it, I completely understand why other people do. And more to you, I never get mad when anyone says that they like it or that is their favorite. I understand. It's just not for me, I'm sorry. There is actually one movie that I would rather watch Toy Story than rewatch it again. And that is my number one. Monsters University. Yeah, this was a movie that no one asked for. Nobody. Nobody wanted this film. We all wanted a Monsters, Inc. sequel, because you left it open for a sequel that is all about Boo and the real world and all this, and instead you decided to do a prequel that tells us how Mike and Sully became friends. Nobody cares how Mike and Sully became friends. Nobody. No, we don't care. Why would we care about that? They're friends. They're weird. It's okay. We don't need to know how they became friends. This is the problem with prequels in general, is you give us inspirations for things that do not matter. That's my big thing with this. It's just that why did they bother? And honestly, the story itself is so cheesy and so predictable. One reviewer that I came across said that this is every single college movie rolled into one, and that is true. This is every single ever college movie ever made. You have the fraternity that's all bullies. You have the new fraternity trying to set themselves up. You have dynamics between teacher and students, and it's every single cliche rolled into one. And it's just a story that no one wanted, is not that interesting, doesn't really add anything to the story of the universe. And then you got Mike and Sully, who spend most of the movie bickering and fighting and just grating each other, and it's just annoying to hear them talk to each other. It really is. And there's like concepts in the story that kind of work. And like the message of the movie could work. I just don't think this is the best method for it. Because there's two messages in this movie. The first is what happens with Mike's character, which he starts off wanting to be a scary, and he wants desperately to be the scary and to do this thing, and having to come to the realization and accepting the fact that he cannot do the thing that he desperately wants to do. But just because you can't do the thing you desperately want to do doesn't mean you can't be great at something. Doesn't mean you can't find a new passion, a new love. And that's a really good story that we don't get very often. You always get the story of the sports person who refuses to retire and goes back in for one more game type of thing and never gets out of that. And it's kind of interesting to have that done. Problem is, it's not very well done. And then you also have this idea where at the end of the movie they make an argument that you can find success outside of the college system. That college isn't the be-all, end-all, that you can achieve your goals and your dreams through other methods. Like Mike and Sully became the top scarers in the world, but not because they went to college, but because they started working in the mailroom and figured things out and built their way up from that way. So telling you that there's multiple methods to succeed is a good message. It's too bad it's at the very end of the film, and doesn't do a good job to show that throughout the rest of the film. It's too focused on these characters bickering, and all this stuff. I do have to say, this isn't the worst film ever made. This isn't even that bad a film. This is only bad in comparison to the rest of Pixar. Because Pixar has hit some out of the park movies. But this one is just a dud that lands at about a 2 out of 5 for me. It's better than a bunch of other companies' mediocre work. Like, the worst of Pixar is still better than some people's good or better work. But it's still not a great film. It's still got lots of stuff that just doesn't work and doesn't make it interesting and just frustrating. It's just frustrating. Because I'm one of the people who super wanted a Monsters Inc. sequel, and that's someone who's flat out admitted on this, I don't particularly love Monsters Inc. But it was like, I wanted a sequel. I actually liked when they were announcing the fact that they were thinking of doing a Monsters Inc. sequel, I was super excited. And then they announced it was to be a prequel on how Mike and Sully became friends, and it all kind of fell apart from there. The animation in this is actually very, very good, and there are elements of this that I do actually like. I have a super huge fascination with the two announcers from the games in there, where it's the one jock bird guy and the snake girl that's goth. I have pictures of them as a couple that I love. The idea of the games themselves is kind of interesting. I honestly, my favorite thing is those two announcers, but it's also that one female monster group that all look the same and have that weird eye thing that they did. I really liked that. That's my favorite thing from this. And they're only in maybe 4 scenes in the entire movie. So, yeah. So that's my top 5 worst Pixar films. Do any of you agree? Do some of you disagree? Am I horrible for disliking Toy Story? Do I ruin your childhood by besmirching Bugs Life and Toy Story and Monsters Inc. and all in one video? Let me know. I will be uploading the top 5 shortly. See y'all later.